Welcome back to the show. Today we are diving into a conversation about more than just business. We're talking about economic liberation. Our guest today believes that thriving communities aren't built by outside forces, but from the inside out. She is a strategist, a builder, and a visionary architect of community-based ecosystems. Please welcome the president and CEO of the Vermont Slauson Economic Development Corporation, better known as VSDC, Dr. Jazz Keys. Now, to understand why Dr. Keys is such a force in South Los Angeles and beyond, you have to look at her builder DNA. Throughout her career, she has designed and implemented over 45 successful community programs. But what makes her approach different is that it's holistic. She doesn't just look at the balance sheet, she integrates entrepreneurship with education, wellness, wealth creation. Before taking the helm as CEO, she led VSEDC's Economic Mobility Initiative for the County of Los Angeles, where she moved the needle for underrepresented founders by creating actual measurable pathways to equity. What I find most fascinating about Dr. Keys is her unique academic foundation and how she takes that approach into her daily work. She sits at the intersection of community studies, clinical psychology, and business. This is where she blends her experience, education, and leadership as a rare mix of strategy and rigor and deep empathy. Whether she's consulting on digital marketing, operational efficiencies, or economic infrastructure, her work has influenced policymakers, institutions across the globe. She isn't just asking for the seat at the table anymore. She is rewriting the blueprints for how those tables are built. And we talk about that during the episode, so you guys are going to love it. Under her new leadership of the VSEDC, she is entering a brand new chapter, one defined by operational excellence and relentless pursuit of justice in motion. She is providing that inclusive growth, and it's just not a buzzword. It's a national model for the future. So again, I'm super excited to have Dr. Jazz Keys here on the episode. You guys are going to love everything she has to say, and please help me welcome Dr. Jazz Keys into the Latinx Business Podcast. Hi, Jazz Keys. Thanks for coming to the Latinx Business Podcast show.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Of course, yes. Thank you for jumping on. I know you're super busy. You're running an organization, right? So that can only mean that you're thinking about 100 things right now.
Absolutely, but really excited to be here. So, again, thank you for the opportunity to chat and interested to get going.
Yeah, and I'm excited to have you on, especially, because we're both working with small businesses in the LA area. And as we were just talking right now, I'm part of the Los Angeles Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce. I sit on the board. You just met our president, so that's even more synchronicity. I love that. Maybe we should try to see how we can either join each other's events or see how there can be some collaboration between that.
Yeah.
Because we are... So last year we started a new initiative where we're going to launch a skills-based training, online training for small businesses, the chamber. But I think we got 50 individuals who expressed interest in official forums that said that they could either provide a workshop or run a workshop. So we're super excited because everyone on the board thought, hey, we're gonna have to do one workshop, each one of us, one a month or something like that. Right. And we got interest from all the members, so we're excited about that.
So that's pretty awesome. Yeah, I did just meet your president. Phenomenal. We're part of a collective fellowship together. So I'll actually be spending some time with him over the next 6 months and a few other leaders in California. So really love what you all stand for and your level of unrelenting advocacy. And I think it'd be awesome if we can kind of find some cross collaboration. But also amazing that you got 50 people to participate, because I do understand that part of all right, if not, we're gonna have to make it work internally. So
right.
It's nice to have that relief on there. So anyway, I can help support with that as well. I'd love to offer that as well.
Okay, cool. No, I appreciate that. Yeah, and I'll definitely I'll let Jared know that I met you too, and he's gonna love it.
Yeah.
Jared's been so instrumental right now with the chamber, because in last year in December, our treasurer had stepped down, and then our executive director left in January for another opportunity. So he's kind of come in and stepped in,
Yeah.
and as the president, he's now acting like executive director. So, and then we've kind of stepped in as the board to be like, okay, we can help you run
Yeah.
a whole nother business because everyone there is running their own businesses,
Right.
you know. So it's a lot of work, but no, it's good. And I like what the chamber stands for. You know, obviously helping small businesses. I wholeheartedly believe that like it's really hard. It's getting tougher every year for small businesses. And,
Yeah.
you know, that's why I'm excited to have you here and your expertise. But yeah, let's get the interview going. And the first question I ask all my interviewees, what's your preferred pronoun and what do you like to go by?
Oh, well, thank you. I go by she, her.
Okay, thank you. Now, you describe yourself as a builder and architect of economic ecosystems. How has being a woman shaped the way you design and lead these ecosystems?
Good question. I think when I think about like what has being a woman kind of allowed for me to visualize and execute on these things a little differently. I think at least in what I have my personal experience as well as just being in relationship with several other, women throughout my life is that we do become very resilient and
Mm,
fluent in
yeah.
resiliency very early in life. And so for me, I didn't just study like economic systems. I really was someone who lived in the gap of them, meaning that I got the opportunity to go fill the gap of my own experiences as being a young black woman who grew up in the same very conditions of some of our most underloved and underserved communities. So I do know what it felt like to be like overlooked and underfunded and underestimated. And so for me, the system being broken in that way and having to navigate it became kind of the blueprint of how I wanted to see these type of service-based organizations really live and exist for the benefit of the community. And so it really shaped how I started building things.
Mm,
And for me, it's like
yeah.
we design with people who have been left out at the center of everything that we do. And so oftentimes when you see programs, it's, the individual that you're serving is an afterthought or a checked box or a metric to be made. So framing it as the community that we serve is at the center allows for us to build outwardly different. And so again, my womanhood, I think, if going back to your question,
Yeah.
has allowed for me to build with both precision and with empathy. So the best way I
Mm,
can describe it is I hold like data in one hand and I
mm-hmm.
hold the human story in the other. And so
Ooh, yeah.
as someone who has fought and to some degree won beating the statistic, I bring those victories into every single battle that I have to do now, being the person who's leading these initiatives. And so I learned from a textbook, of course, my
Yeah.
degrees, but I also learned from living inside the problem. And so again, that harmony between empathy and precision and knowing what it means to center the people you serve in everything that you decide versus serving them as an afterthought are all the ways in which I've really learned to fine tune and find excellence in how to build these ecosystems.
Yes, yes, no. And I appreciate that perspective too so much because,
Hmm.
I feel like so many underserved communities are forced into entrepreneurship or creatively forced into entrepreneurship,
Yeah.
right? I don't want to say that they're like stronghold into it. Someone's not going to do it unless they really want to be an entrepreneur. But
Hmm.
you are right. There's always like higher ups, or boardrooms making decisions for
Correct.
the rest when you're right. Maybe, we forget that like we're making these decisions for these members of the community, but we're not inviting them to the table, right?
Correct. Correct.
And that's tough too, I mean, it's tough too because like, again, it's like time and people have, a lot of responsibilities, but I like that you come with that perspective because small businesses really do need that empathy. I feel
Absolutely.
like, I've been doing taxes for 16 years now. So I've had my fair share of like working for a man with a certain color eye in privilege, right? To say the least. The more years of experience they get, the more expensive they get, which is, in everyone's right? Because we're all trying to like financially like move forward. But then I feel like then at some point those services then become unattainable, and especially for small businesses that are starting up. So I
Right.
totally understand where you're coming from and what that means for you. So thank you for sharing that perspective. I
No,
really, really like that.
absolutely.
Yeah. All right, the next question. You lead with a commitment to economic liberation and justice. What does economic liberation look like specifically for women in communities like South Los Angeles?
I will say economic liberation isn't a program, it's more of a posturing. The programs is the modality in which we help get people to a better economic state, but it really is a posturing. And what I mean by that,
Yeah.
it's a fundamental shift in like who gets to build wealth and who gets to hold power and who gets to define what success looks like in their own community. So for women in South LA, it looks like being able to actually own the business on the block and not just work in it. It looks like having access to capital that doesn't come with predatory strings attached. It's like the single mother who's able to actually build generational wealth while showing up for her family. And so it looks like women who are able to shape policy, to make decisions, but get to be the author of their own destinies, not in imagination, but in a lived reality. And so true liberation to me is a woman who doesn't have to choose between survival and success. And
Mm.
so that is
Okay. Yeah.
what we attempt to offer to our community is women who get to, and again, we serve everyone, we down to youth, men, women, all, but I know our focus is the conversation in honor of Women's History Month, and I love
Hmm.
talking about
Yeah.
women's empowerment. But it's a woman who gets to build both and gets to own her terms, gets to own space in her community, and gets to own the vision with the actual tools and resources to bring that into fruition. And so that's what we're building here. It's not just opportunity, but true ownership. And that is what we say and mean and stand on when we're talking about empowering our community. I know economic mobility is a really good buzzword right now,
Hmm.
but for us, it's also that liberation. It's understanding what does it truly mean to be free economically, and how are we building and delivering and supporting people in moving closer to that freedom of choice.
Yeah, no, and then like even like you said, taking that position, right, where you are advocating for them, and you're, because like so many like lenders out there will be like, yeah, we'll get you a loan for like 20%, and I'm like,
Yeah.
wait a minute, who can ever pay something
Who
like
can
that
ever
back?
pay that? And I think we
Yeah.
own a CDFI here. Essentially, a CDFI is a space where we get the opportunity to potentially like fund the unbankable. And so here I tell us like we fund the dreamers because
Mm.
traditionally a lot of there's just a plethora of statistics about how women are underfunded and have difficulty being able to scale. They're creating more businesses, but that access
Okay.
to
Yeah.
truly scale, you can see a clear like disparity between men and women in that space. So, here at the CDFI, we take pride in being able to fund those that traditionally can't maybe walk into a bank and get funded. But even then, it is the need to really understand that component of small business and how to take it from I'm making a little extra money on the side to I'm moving in closer and closer to removing myself from the workforce should that be my choice, or starting to
Hmm.
build generational wealth or create more freedom and liberty for myself. And so that is incredibly important to us here.
Yeah, no, no. And I'm glad you mentioned the CDFI because like I had forgotten about that.
Yeah.
To be able to fund someone that's not traditionally bankable, right?
Oh my God, it's so honorable. It's such great work. And it's so necessary because again, we're dealing with a population that one they need the capital to
Yes.
grow and to scale. And getting trapped in that space where the bootstrapping can only go so far. But then also we are here to dismantle the impact of a training on how we understand money and wealth and
Hmm.
debt. And so we do a lot of bit of both here.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
No, yeah, that's really good, and I feel like a lot of dreamers and even unbankable individuals have these dreams of being an entrepreneur, and working for themselves. And aside from economic mobility, it's like lifestyle freedom. Like people can work from
Yeah.
anywhere now. I've seen so many, like, social media, of course, but I couldn't put like a number to it. But I think there's a woman in South LA who's making burritos all morning long, and then she shows up at a site, she sells out like in 30 minutes, and then she's now making money, right? So I'm like, yeah, someone like that would be great to have in that program, because I don't want to speak without really knowing the facts, but I want to say that she might be an immigrant without status here, right? So yeah, she's not gonna like feel comfortable going out and
Correct.
working, especially right now with ICE and everything, the environment that we're living in America in general, but here in Los Angeles too. So my mom's friend, I mean, she's I think 60 something now, but I want to say like maybe like 10 years ago, her and her daughter started just offering Mexican breakfasts from their
Mm-hmm.
driveway. And it's like around the corner from my mom's house in East LA. And we try to go to her as much as we can to support, but now
Yeah.
they have like their clientele and stuff. And it's just amazing, because even down the street from my mom's house, some guy started like a coffee shop, and then inside the butchery, like in Spanish it's carniceria. Now they're selling like menudo and tacos for breakfast, right? And that's like
Amazing.
two corner opposites of like my mom's house and stuff like that. So like, yeah, would I rather go spend money like this big restaurant? Of course, like I want to treat my mom, but she loves supporting the small businesses that are around the corner from her house.
I
And
love that so
yeah,
much. And I think that is a conditioning of the heart where for her it's, again, some of us we kind of make it out. I say that on my
yeah,
end where it's like
right,
how I grew up and where I am now is, my God, you made it out. And so there is a
right,
widening of your understanding of the world and your experiences. But I think at the heart of it is your mom is less concerned about like that Michelin 5-star
mm-hmm,
experience as much as it is that she knows that her money is going directly to someone who is, getting up at the crack of dawn and being in
yeah,
service. And so I think here we really do pride ourselves on serving small businesses too. So anytime we order something, we cater something, we have an event, there's, purchases that need to be made, we are always buying from small businesses.
from small
But I
businesses,
think
yeah,
even training the community to keep some of the money circulating within the community is an effort as well. Because again, putting it directly into that small sidewalk vendor's, pocket versus like a corporate conglomerate of franchise, whatever the case may be,
mm-hmm,
they do have two different impacts. And that's not to say you have to choose one or other.
right,
Understanding like, hey, let me be thoughtful about who I spend and where I spend. And so for us being in service of black and brown businesses, it is very important for people to have a trusted environment. So I tell the team all the time, our first mission, our first order of business is making sure people feel safe here.
yeah,
Because this is going to
yes,
be for our brown businesses, like, our Spanish speaking businesses, and that we're seeing that, right? So we're seeing that
right,
fear and we're seeing that anxiety. And for us to be able to be somewhat soothing in that place to say, like, hey, we have some options if you're undocumented. First
mm-hmm,
of all and foremost, undocumented, documented, you are welcome here, you are safe here. And so just seeing some of that relief of like,
oh
that's what
yeah,
matters for us.
yeah,
And so, yeah, being able to access that capital so that you can go from, that small one person operation that's cooking burritos all morning and
yeah,
running back and selling out. It's like you can add another team member, you can add the location, you can have a little bit better operation. Maybe you're able to go back and, prepare for a lunch rush. And so these are all things that
mm,
are capital, like our capital needs that let you actually scale and grow. And so for us, it is marrying the trust factor with the support and tools and resources to help you understand what that looks like and the capital to propel yourself forward.
yeah.
That trifecta is important in this type of
No,
work.
yeah. That's very important. And I'm glad you bring that up, because to me, so many people are, I mean, not to put it back on my experience, but like I first started doing taxes because I worked like part time for the city of Los Angeles, and I needed more hours, and they're like, we can give you more hours if you learn how to do taxes, and I was like, no, thank you.
Never
But
mind.
then the necessity of like I need to keep working, I was like, sure, I'll sit here and read this book for 2 weeks. And so even taking it back to the lady I saw on Instagram that like is selling out her burritos, like you're right, like maybe she's just thinking survival mode at the moment, but making that shift over to like past survival. I mean, not to be
Hmm.
cliche, but thrive, you
Yep.
know,
Yep.
and adding that other team member, like that might seem impossible to her because like where do I get the capital to pay someone a
Exactly.
salary? Like that is like if I have someone working for me, and I'm sure every entrepreneur has similar feelings and thoughts, and it's so emotional. First of all, and we don't see it that way, but it really is.
Hmm.
And if someone just worked 5 hours for me, I'm in debt to them now. I owe them like a
Hmm.
salary, you know? So like to me
Yeah.
that's really really important. So you bringing that up, I mean, and that's where organizations like yours step in and help like frame that mindset,
Yeah.
and which I think is very important and very helpful because again, you might start off in like a survival mode, and just like I was like, I need more hours to make more money.
Yep.
I'm not even thinking about the next possibility or what happens after
Hmm.
that. Yeah, yeah.
Correct. I heard this quote one time, or I forgot where I heard it, but it has lived with me since. But it was saying wealthy people, what they really are good at is making the money to buy their time back. And so we see that differently when many of us are in that survival space, which is like, I can't even see like that far ahead to see how this thing can be, wealth generating, and I can buy some of my time back. So I'm not, slaving just to survive. And it's just the shift in some of that mindset is, people are living with a foot in both worlds. I have to survive, and so my survival means that maybe that is hindering my ability to thrive. But ultimately, I need to thrive, so I need to find that space between doing what I
Right.
have to survive, but having an exit plan on, or a strategy on how I'm going to buy my time back and buy my freedom. And that has to be a
Yes.
place where we're able to encourage some of those conversations.
Yes, no, thanks. All right, next question. So, as a woman leading a major economic development corporation,
Hmm.
what barriers did you have to dismantle internally or externally to fully step into this role?
Ooh.
That's a loaded question.
I mean, it is because it goes back to like that part of you get that spirit of like, I don't get the opportunity to not figure stuff out. And then
Hmm.
when you step back and you're thinking about like, ooh, okay, what was that actual emotional and mental and all the labor that took for you to continue to show up in that space. So good
Yeah.
question. I would say externally is having to navigate spaces that are not necessarily meant to make women leaders comfortable, or to make, people of color comfortable. So in ways in which these boardrooms and negotiations and policies, being at the table having that conversation, but also being authoritative enough to say like, I earned my seat here, and then
Mm.
remembering my role here is to advocate for those that'll never be in these rooms. And so my dad, before he passed away, he would just always say like, listen, you're a black woman, so you're going to have to work twice as hard for half as much. And
Right.
so having always seen that to be the case, the need to constantly prove your competency, and the higher you rise, it just gets more creative on how that gets challenged. When you're
Mm.
in kind of at that poverty level or below, that feeling of, being condescending, or being, dismissed, or being disrespected to a certain degree, it's almost like that comes with the territory. I tell people all the time, like, our community can go anywhere and be mistreated. They will never be mistreated here. So when you get higher in the ranks, it doesn't remove it. It just becomes much more crafty in how
Right.
that happens. And so, you have to stand your ground in those spaces. And me not operating in my fullness ultimately harms those that we're here to serve. And so that will always be the experience and case to a certain degree for women in leadership younger adults in leadership, black and brown people that are in leadership, it's just always going to be a slight undertone in, our efforts. And so
Right.
it's like, it's almost, they make you almost feel like you're a visitor, to the
Yeah.
vision, or a visitor to the work. But I stopped
Yeah.
being a visitor long ago. And so it's like, this is my house now, this is my home now, and like, I'm here, and I'm going to make sure that, regardless of what I endure, I know I can walk out of those rooms and know I said everything, did everything, advocated, for all the people who are counting on people like us to, do the work
Yeah.
that allows them to have access to what they deserve. Internally, I
Yeah.
think, it's learning how not to. I had to learn this a while ago, like how not to shrink or to soften or to code switch or to play by the rules in order to be taken seriously. So
Okay.
for me, there used to be a place where it's like strategy was straightforward and strategy was, passion was playing in the background. And now I learn like my passion is what got me here. My passion is what helps me stand when things are difficult to navigate. My passion for the people that we love and serve is why I'm in this leadership space. And so removing that need to play small or to, tone down my passion or to code switch has been incredibly helpful for me in this role. So I
Yeah.
think at the end of the day, I just give myself the permission to be powerful and to be human at the same time. So I don't have to drop one in order to show up in the space. You're going to get both power and authority and, like strength and advocacy, and I'm also like a human. So ultimately, I would say internally, I just had to give myself permission to be both powerful and to be human. And
Hmm.
for me, that means to be able to lead with intellect and my intuition, and to be both strategic and bring my soul into a space. And so the day I stopped apologizing for the fullness of who I am was the day I think my leadership took a different direction, because I'm not here to just exist in the space and, quietly be there and just be grateful to be there. Like, this is where transformation has to happen. And for me, it was that component, that the people that we've been called and we're honored to be part of their journey need the people who are okay with being disruptors, need the people who are okay with challenging the status quo and asking for more and demanding more and not being silenced or pushed over. And so it's that leadership that says it's not always, polite. It's not always pretty. And to be a good leader, it means you have to understand that your work is a fusion of both. Again, that soul and that strategy, that intuition and the intellect, the power and the human component. And I think people really do appreciate seeing individuals who are really willing to see and operate in the rawness of what it means to do this work. So it's not always polished in that way. And I think the
Mm.
community that we serve in particular
Yeah.
deeply connect with individuals who feel more real and feel more authentic. And so I think that's an example of how this work can be done. And like, young girls can see a woman leader and can be able to draw a line from where they are to where they could be, and being able to visualize that as something that's not outside of their realm of understanding or their possibility. And so I think those things are important to me when I think about leadership.
Yeah. No, thanks for sharing that perspective.
Yeah.
I feel like so many of us step into leadership roles,
Mhm.
but they never tell you how. I mean,
To
you
lead.
always hear, yeah, yeah. You never learn how to lead, even in business school. I mean, I feel like
Correct.
you could take leadership courses all day long, and that's still not going to teach you how to like lead your team or individuals. But I also feel like so many of us feel like once we step into this business state, that you need to like cut off all emotions, right?
Correct.
And both of our communities, black and brown communities, we come with a lot of passion, a lot of emotions, right?
Exactly.
And so
Exactly.
it's not that like, you're trying to, be like troublesome or not follow the rules or break the rules every time you see that, I think we just because we have to fight and survive every day, like we come with such
Correct.
a creative mindset to be like, why is that? And we question a lot of things.
Because it don't make sense.
It doesn't make sense. Yeah, you're like nothing ever makes sense. And I'm like, okay, so this is just how it's been done. Got it.
Yes. Yes.
But I like how you say, you stand in your own and you are who you are. And that doesn't mean that like just you're going to represent yourself, but you're also going to advocate for the community. Right. And I think that's what so many
Correct.
people forget to do. And that's also part of like, one of the main reasons I started the podcast. 20, 30 years from now, I won't be around, but these recordings will live forever.
Exactly. They're
Right. So,
archived and
yeah.
historic empowerment that people can access.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. The next question. So you've built over 45 community-based programs. What leadership traits are essential for turning vision into sustainable infrastructure?
Ooh, that's
Yeah.
actually a really good question. And I think it's in the premise of, you know, coming into this role in a turnaround space and kind of having to do something very similar to what you all are doing now at the chamber. One of the things we had to do was really do an audit and assessment of our programs and how we've served and just reimagine that. And so, one of the things that is embedded into our current program framework is that we want to create a space where our businesses know how to take action. They know how to drive results. They know, like, we're taking that learning off of the, flat presentation space and really leaving individuals with tangible, actionable things that they can do immediately. And I said that because we do share this a lot and we do say this in different ways, but vision without execution is just a dream, right? And so I think it's incredibly important that when we're thinking about how to take the vision and really make it sustainable, infrastructure is that key component is the execution. Otherwise, you're just holding on to a dream. And so,
Right.
really making sure that our business owners understand that this level of building is going to require discipline. It requires systems that think. It requires the ability to bring people along with you because no one can build anything transformative alone at all. The leaders who are able to build one are the ones who can hold a high level view and then also get into the trenches. And so we really do try to
Ooh.
connect those two things for our small businesses. So can you sit across from a funder and articulate a 10-year strategy and then walk down the street and connect with the individuals that in an authentic way that you created this strategy for? And so
Right.
it's it's not an either or, it's a both and that is necessary to really build a sustainable infrastructure. So you have to be able to speak the language of power and the language of people. And so you can never lose either one. And so I think that is incredibly important when you're talking about that building. So people have to believe in you. They have to believe in the mission. They have to believe that their contribution or support of your work actually leads into something that matters. Those are
Yeah.
all key to moving into that like infrastructure and that sustainability. And beyond that, we're really trying to support our businesses and understanding that you're in a market now where adaptability and keen decision making is essential. So moving past that fear, we see that a lot, especially in our small businesses where the fear of not knowing what to do paralyzes them. And so it's understanding that with the emergence of AI shift that we're in, the
Ooh, yeah.
things we're seeing, the things
Hey, yeah.
yeah, it's a crazy time right now. It is an insane time on all fronts. What we're seeing politically, what we're seeing economically means that you have to fine tune and learn how to trust and listen to your inner wisdom, make decisions quickly and be adaptable and pivot. So really the leaders that are able to have that lasting impact are the ones who are staying curious, they're staying humble and they're evolving with the vision, and most importantly, they understand that none of this can happen without execution, discipline,
Yeah.
strategic thinking, and the ability to really understand what it means to be a CEO and not like the owner of a side hustle, which is nothing wrong with that. But when we're talking about transitioning into some of that
Mm-hmm.
deeper reach and scalability, that's where it goes. Those things have to shift mentally for you to get to that place.
Yes, very well said. Yes, yes. Another question. Your work blends metric driven strategy with deep empathy. How do you balance analytical rigor with people centered leadership?
I think it has to do with the fact that I just refuse to separate them. I've been building
Mm,
these types of programs, setting up organizations. I've been my own solopreneur who has built successful six-figure businesses. I used to be business, all of that. Um, gone to schools, like all the culmination of my experiences, both lived experiences, navigating in the space and having learned and failed and learned some more and failed. I do not separate the two because in our world, you really can't afford to. So data is going to tell us what's happening, but the people are going to tell us why it's happening. And
mm,
so
yeah.
understanding that how those two things work together and they cannot live separately is really how you build these people-centered programs. So I am looking at the metrics. I do understand the gaps. I am attentive to the outcomes. I
Yeah.
do understand, ROI of the work we do. But I'm also sitting across from the single mother who has been limited her access to fully grow this business or make it a actual revenue stream that's, lightening the lift financially within the home and asking what got in your way. And so by listening to the entrepreneur who feels like they've done everything they can or they've done everything right or they've been in this fight to really gain true momentum in these businesses lets us know what systems are missing. But data is also truth that informs what we build too. So the numbers give me the blueprint, I feel like, and the people
Mm,
give us the purpose. And so for me, separating the two is a danger to actually being able to have deep impact. And in the world we're in, it's really easy to get caught up in metrics, both true and vanity, and optics and all those things. But it is
yeah.
that data and it is the people. The synergy between those both is really what's going to make for the best type of leadership and the best type of impact. So when you lead in that way, when you let your rigor meet with humanity, I found that that's where the all the other things, the metrics, the outcomes, what you're required to deliver, they take care of themselves.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's the difference between like charity work and true liberation work.
Yeah, I like that. And you just said something that I was in my mind. I thought, oh, I'm gonna quote you moving forward. Like, I think you said the numbers show you what's going on out there, and then you
Hmm.
said the people give you the purpose. I was like, I love
Yeah,
that. I love that. I'm gonna definitely quote you.
take it. Yeah,
That,
data tells us what's happening, and the people tell us why.
yeah. Yeah, no, that's so good. So, like, when I became an accountant, I mean, for me, it was a necessity. But then when I started looking at the numbers told me a story, right? And I
Right.
always tell people, like, look at the numbers, look at the patterns. It describes a story. You just have to, analyze it or,
Correct.
like, be able to understand, like, oh, that's what it's telling me, right?
Exactly.
And then I also present that story to like a lot of artists because artists are very like, oh, I'm not numbers driven. And I do work with
Oh, yes.
freelancers. I work with like some TikTokers, some influencers as well. And they're like, I'm not good with numbers, right? And I'm like, yes, you are. Like, you are good with numbers. And I got to remind them that the numbers tell a story. And as soon as they hear that, they're like, it kind of shifts their mindset a little bit
Exactly.
because everyone loves a good story.
For sure. And I love our creative entrepreneurs, love
Yeah.
them to death. I smile because that is often the conversation is they are living in the art and the passion and the work and they're using it to make money, but there comes a point where business has to intersect with the art, and it usually starts to be those conversations around like what does it mean to actually track your money, not commingling your funds, like really being
Yes.
able to, if you're taking these like cash apps and zip, like how are you tracking them in a centralized place? And when you talk about numbers and story, I really see that work in our CDFI, which is traditional banks. It's the numbers, right? It's do you have this credit score? Do you have this? Do your numbers make sense? And that's how we assess risk. Clean cut often.
Hmm.
There are, of course, some institutions that try to, prioritize relationships, and I think to a certain degree, but their standard framework is you have to exist in black and white in a way that makes sense. On our CDFI side, one of our evaluation tools, the story, right? It's understanding that, like, hey, yes, I do have this outstanding credit card debt, but that came because I had to infuse the business in order to get it going and I didn't have the capital. So I had to go take out a couple of credit cards, but I'm actively paying those down. Or,
Right.
I went through a crisis, it really does give place for the story and the numbers. And I think that's what makes that type of funding so necessary and so beneficial to the communities that we serve.
Yes, thank you. Many
Yeah.
organizations talk about inclusion, right? What does true inclusion, inclusive economic growth look like in practice?
Yes. That is a good question, and I will not get on my soapbox about inclusion and the illusion of inclusion.
Okay.
Because that's definitely like, is this mic on?
I was like, I'm
So,
here for it. You can say whatever you want.
but really, it looks like who actually is the most key decisions. Who's signing the contracts? Who owns equity in the development deals?
Mm,
Who benefits from the tax incentives? Who voice gets to be heard when policies are being shaped? So to me, inclusion can't just be language or on a website or on a diversity slide in a pitch deck. It has to show up in the budgets. It has to show up in the leadership structure. It actually shows up in who owns power and resources and how they disperse those resources. So,
yeah.
in the community you're serving, or if the community that you're serving isn't leading the work, you're not doing inclusion, you're doing optics. That's my opinion. And so, too often than not, and I even say myself as someone who grew up in conditions that would be very reflective of some of the most difficult and most underserved communities. I even tell myself and the team that while many of us have a consciousness around it and some of us have actually lived through some of this, it is still not our lived experience now. So
Mm,
even me, who has deep understanding of communities, deep understanding of the needs and the barriers and things like that, I still have to honor and respect the voices of those that are enduring it right now. And so, what I think might be the issue or the concern or the barriers, I've heard and been in conversations where it's like the things that have been flagged have been, yep, that's great too, but it's also this, this, and this. And so, for me, that's important. Again, if the community you're serving is not leading the work,
hmm.
then you're not doing inclusion. You're doing the optics of inclusion, or
Right.
you're doing the performance of inclusion. And so it's about co-creating with our communities and not occasionally consulting with them. It means when a neighborhood gets revitalized, the people there aren't displaced by that. It means
Right.
like measuring success not just by jobs created, but by wealth built and ownership established, by futures that actually get to be secured. Excuse me.
Hmm.
Again, it means like measuring that success not just by like jobs that created or wealth that gets built, but real ownership and people who feel secure in their future, that are not living in a panic state of every day I'm just trying to get through the day. Like, that is the real life of our communities,
Mm,
is every day I'm trying to figure out how to get to the next day, and that is not a state that anyone should have to live in. That anxiety and pressure and frustration and overwhelmness and
right.
sadness that comes with that is unbearable. And so that's why I
Mm,
say, for
mm,
us, it is liberation. It's freeing our people from those conditions. Because at the end of the day, access without ownership is still creating systems of dependency. And so, our goal is that when working with our small businesses, there comes a point where they don't need us. They've
mm,
received, they've grown, they've expanded, they've accessed capital,
yeah.
they've learned, they've been, and they get to say, like, wow, I started here, here's my journey. Thank you for everything. And can always still find home here, but
Yeah.
going into like some alumni or some mentoring services because you
Yeah.
came in the door one way and left out another. So
Yeah.
we do not want to create or perpetuate a place where we're keeping people dependent on a system. So
Okay.
that
Yeah.
is, true inclusion. And as you can see, like I said, I can go on about that one
Full
all day,
circle, full circle
but
moment. Yeah, no, I get you. I'm like, I'm here for it, and I totally agree with you. And it almost seems like, tracking these numbers or tracking these success stories go beyond like 1 or 2 years. It's more like a long term, and then not only tracking the success in their business, but also tracking the wealth changes in their life over the years
correct.
as well.
Yep,
Because
you got it.
that seems like that's the true measure of like, okay, did you really empower the small business owner to go from here to like 20 employees, but like, are they still renting? Or, I mean, they can rent for, if they choose to,
Yeah.
but a lot of people think renting right now in LA is better. Anyways, but no, that, yeah, like that measure, you never really hear people or the big
Yeah.
studies or like NPR or Bloomberg or like these big channels like talk about like that being a measure of success.
Correct.
So thanks for bringing
Because
that
it,
up. Yeah.
yeah, because it lives in the metrics. You know, did I hit all the metrics that this grant, required or this contract asked for? And you can get lost in those numbers. What really needs to be measured is the deeper impact, right? Was there sincere impact by being in this space? And what does that impact look like? And so the metrics do tell powerful stories, but that actual true transformation is an even more important metric when you're measuring if what you're doing is actually helping people.
Yeah. Okay. So historically, women, especially women of color, have been excluded from wealth building systems. And just going off what we were just talking about too, like what necessary changes need to happen to have a wider scale in terms of these narratives, like, you know?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So what shifts are necessary? Yeah. I would say that we are at a point in society where we have to be okay with disrupting the systems that were intentionally designed to exclude us and not just trying to tinker around the edges or not just trying to learn how to, best navigate within them. I think the days of being nice around what we deserve are gone. And
Yeah.
so this is the era of disruption, which is once we know and we're in the awareness that this isn't necessarily designed to include us, our best strategy is not to respond by learning how to play within these broken systems because even if you progress a little bit, we never win. And so it's fundamentally restructuring. When we're talking about small businesses, who gets funding, who gets the contracts, who gets the opportunities. And because this wasn't by accident, the wealth gap didn't happen by chance. So it was engineered, right? Even accepting that shift that this is not by happenstance. This is absolutely by design. It was absolutely engineered this way. And I think closing it, re envisioning it, demanding that it looks different is going
Mm.
to require that same level of intentionality and structural thinking that created it. And so that does mean policy change, but it also means institutions being held more accountable for how they support,
Yeah.
promote, fund, partner with. It means investors writing checks to women who look like me without
Right.
requiring us to labor twice as hard and perform, and to labor twice as hard and having to do like double the work. So it means, for me, this is a place where we have a little bit of righteous anger, right? We have a
Mm.
little bit of saying like enough.
Enough.
And I think that is what is required in this moment. I think when you are looking like philanthropy thinking has to shift and it has to go from not seeing when you support a woman as like I did a good act of charity, but I made a real investment in understanding that when you do resource, black and brown women, it is an investment. Like you're not taking on a risk. You should be ecstatic for this investment because our ability to return on that investment is seen consistently across the board. So it's
Mm.
understanding that when you bet on women, you're actually betting on excellence. And so the ability for women of color to ascend to decision making positions, not just as tokens, but as true architects who have the power to shift culture, to redirect capital, to rewrite the rules, that's where we are now. And I think it's gotten pushed to the point where women are okay with saying like that doesn't work for me anymore any longer. And so
Yeah.
we're seeing a lot of that show
That's
up
good. Yeah.
in yeah, we're seeing it and it's a different world,
Yeah.
but it is one that I am ecstatic about because like yeah, we're not
Yeah.
going for it anymore.
You
And so
know, I actually, personally, deep down inside, I feel like women entrepreneurs or leaders are 100 times more empathetic than men.
yes. Yeah.
right? Like I will say that like every day. And I just feel like, yeah, when you lead and you understand that like you're leading individuals and even just communities or people who feel,
Yeah.
like that changes the game. But again, I think that just traditionally the business world has been like put on your game face, no emotions, and that's the way it's always been presented. And maybe that was a way for it to be engineered to push, women outside of it. And especially,
Hmm.
times are changing now too. But just like you said, like more and more women are opening businesses everywhere across America than men. So I just hate to hear these stories because like I work with so many women that are entrepreneurs and I also work with men too. But for some reason, I still feel like the opportunities come a little bit easier to all the men I work with
Yep.
in these businesses. I do see these women working twice as hard or not only it's not just working twice as hard, but they may also be mothers and they have children, and so they're working like two, three jobs.
Abs- exactly.
So yeah, I
Yeah.
totally get that, and even like yeah, I think that at the end of the day, people like you need to be in position of leadership positions, and the more you can get your voice out there, I think you've inspired me right now. Just like going back with
Thank
all
you.
the
I
things you've
appreciate
said,
that.
and I feel like it's a really good reminder to think, one of the things when I started this business, of taxes and bookkeeping, I wanted to do the opposite of all the men I've ever worked for. Like it was now I understand why some of them like would push harder and be like figure it out on your own because then that makes their job harder, right? Instead of being an actual mentor to somebody. And I'm like when I started my company, I was like I don't want to do that. Or like I've worked with like or just choosing to where my money goes to. Like I worked with a woman owned business and she created these posters for me here in the office and they weren't cheap because they're all hand drawn. I don't know if you can see them, but we remade like a hundred
Wow.
dollar bills.
Those are hand drawn?
They're all hand drawn, yeah.
Oh my God.
And
That's amazing.
they were not cheap, because she employs other artists. But I wanted to work with her and specifically a woman in the arts. So, but yeah, those are the kind of decisions we need to be making, and putting our voices out there. We have reached our last question. So let me ask you this question because I think it's important when you talk about like helping our community. Who helped you? Who poured into your journey? And how are you intentionally multiplying that impact for the next generation of women leaders?
Ooh, such a loaded question. First, let me
Yeah.
say, I have been inspired by you as well. You are a amazing host.
Thanks.
There's such a naturalness around the way in which you kind of navigate your podcast that it just kind of feels like you're just having one of those, you know,
Yeah.
conversations with a friend, two
Yeah.
passionate people who are venting or sharing or exchanging. So
Yeah.
amazing work to you. For
Thanks.
me, I will say, of course, I have to give honor and, my flowers to my mother, who has been a woman of influence. And, right now, me being in this role and position, I have children. And so she is a right hand help even now to this day as an adult woman with children.
Yeah.
She is still showing up for the sake of me being able to be the best version of myself. And so my mother didn't necessarily have the same opportunities that I did, didn't have the same, any of those things per se, but she was adamant about me getting every opportunity that she could. And so that's why I understand these community programs and, X, Y, and Z, because when you're looking for free services and things like that, you see the difference in kind of what you were able to receive through like these government programs or so on and so forth versus the experience that some of our counterparts get or their children get. And just that
Mm.
difference,
Right.
completely. So my mom is really responsible for seeing my power and pushing it even when I didn't see myself. I will say that unshakable sense of purpose carried with me. I am fortunate to be in a role at VSEDC. That this organization was founded by a woman 45 years ago, a black woman, and she
Yep.
founded this organization in the height of a climate that it would be easy to hide and choose to do nothing. And so she built at the most contentious times in our generation, the most difficult times, and like she just refused to allow that to be. And so
Yeah.
her 45-year-ago vision is now why a young black woman gets to be in the CEO role of a legacy organization.
Yeah.
But her legacy is so powerful and so deep. Like the way people speak about her, and the way in which she has advocated for this community. I don't take lightly the shoes that I am walking in.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say holding that in. But in general, I think I am the quintessential, the dictionary definition of a girl's girl. So
Yeah.
I've always looked and found ways to follow women, empower women, understand their stories, help do whatever I can, just because women supporting women is a theme in my life. So I will say every woman to some degree is a source of inspiration to me, and I take that with me in how I multiply the impact. So it's the legacy work. It's having women show up for other women. It's taking the leadership role and making sure that I am a true advocate for it all. But in general, I think women are just, there are no
Yeah.
words for just how powerful we are. And so I do carry that both in my work and the efforts that we build out in the community. And so they say, teach a man, he'll teach another man. Teach a woman, she'll teach a nation. And
Oof. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I do see that women who are empowered then go out and teach the nation. And
Mm.
so the more we can pour into women, the more we can see a global impact of that empathy that meets that purpose and discipline and execution of it all. So that's my 2 cents around
Yes.
it. But yeah, give it to a woman and see it be done correctly. And just the ability to continue to persevere is a great respect I have for
Yeah.
who we are.
No, yes, Jazz. Thanks so much for all the
Absolutely.
information, for your
Absolutely.
thoughts, the way you work with leadership within your house,
Thank
and
you.
for representing BSEDC, right? So, how can someone, before we close out the episode, how can someone get a hold of you or your organization if they're looking for help? Like, what's the best way for them to
Yeah.
contact you guys?
Absolutely. I think if anyone is interested in learning more, understanding the resources we offer,
Hmm.
anything to any degree, there are a few different ways. One, our doors are always open, so you can come by our office. That's 1130 West Slauson Avenue. Definitely, door open. We're getting back into in-person programming and things like that, so there'll be a
Yeah.
lot of things happening here. If social media is your preferred modality, you can find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram at VSEDC, which is Vermont Slauson Economic Development Corporation. VSEDC on all platforms. You can also go to our website, which is
Okay.
www.vsedc.com.
Jazz, thank you so much. You were a pleasure. I know you're super busy, so I probably should let you go.
No, you are such a
But yeah.
pleasure. This is the highlight of my week. Thank
Oh,
you
thank you.
for what
Yes.
you do, because it's easy for you to not even have moved into this territory, but the way in which you are determined to give our people education in a real and raw way. I know this is an extra labor of love for you, but it's needed and it's necessary. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining me on this episode. Please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and share this podcast with your network. Your support helps our Latinx business community grow stronger with every listen, and I truly invite you to connect with us. Send us your questions, your comments, or even your own business stories to randy@rgtaxes.com. I would love to hear from you. Until next time, keep learning, keep building your business, and keep growing your business mindset.